The magic of the FA Cup strikes again, and this year it's Crystal Palace who are the benefactors of it. The Eagles have landed. Crystal Palace have done it. The first trophy in the entire club's history, and it's come in ridiculous fashion against Manchester City of all teams. But this is really what it's about, ladies and gentlemen. This right here is what it's all about. For clubs of the stature, with all due respect, of Crystal Palace, a day like today, which has probably, I would have to guess, leapfrogged everything in their history up to this point and catapulted itself into the greatest day in Crystal Palace's history, at least without a doubt their modern history. This is what it's about. There's often this debate about for mid-table clubs, right? And again, I don't want to disrespect any Palace fan by calling them a mid-table club, but like clubs that aren't of the typical Man City, Man United, Liverpool. You understand what I'm saying? Like clubs that don't taste silverware every single season, clubs that don't fight for titles every single season. Is a day out at Wembley, for example, or in general, a cup final, winning that kind of trophy, a better experience, something you'd rather see your club do than go play in Europe? Because we've seen examples of both, right? But I think looking at Crystal Palace today and seeing how the players kind of collapsed at the end in pure just, wow, passion. Like Eze, looking at the look on his face, seeing the looks on the fans' faces as they kind of realized as the seconds kind of tick down, this is happening. This is our time. Everything that I've ever dreamed of as a fan of this team is all coming together in this exact moment. Soak it in. The tears are flowing. It just kind of made me think, yeah. Like playing in the Europa League, even maybe playing in the Champions League for teams like this are incredible moments that I'm sure they never even dreamed of. But nothing tops a day like this for that kind of club. A day like this where they get to see the club that they've spent their entire life supporting. Finally, for one day, it might not happen again. It sure as hell hasn't happened before. But for one day, they get to experience their team lift a trophy just like the best teams in the world do. So Crystal Palace, full hats off to you guys, full applause to you guys, fully deserved as well too. And what a final it was, right? Man City facing off against Crystal Palace. I think most people kind of looked at City and thought to themselves, yeah, they are obviously the favorites. When you look at the amount of money that this club has spent on the squad that they have, when you look at the size of both clubs, you look at Pep Guardiola compared to Oliver Glasner, you just kind of think to yourself, yeah, the City are the big favorites. But that's what makes this competition so special. And that's why we continue saying the magic of the FA Cup. And although maybe over the last few years, because of how much richer and richer the Premier League clubs are kind of getting, the maybe magic element of it is starting to stray away. It's still possible for days like this to exist. But Man City, right? If I'm going to really focus on them for a little bit, and we're going to get back to Palace. Wow. I mean, this kind of just caps off what has been an utterly disappointing season for them. And if I'm going to really look at anybody today, I think I have to look at Pep. And all throughout this season, right? We've looked at the injuries that City have suffered. We've acknowledged that. We've looked at the poor recruitment over the summer. We've acknowledged that. That is all things you cannot escape from if you're looking at City and trying to analyze them. But I think Pep, to be honest with you, right, I think is quite fortunate to have the amount of credit in the bank that he does up to this point. And of course, he's earned the credit in the bank. He's, for some people, the greatest manager of all time for a reason. But if this was really anybody else coaching the season that City have gone through, my goodness, I think there would be a lot more criticism kind of aimed at them. And because it's Pep, we kind of sit back and say, you know what, he's allowed a bad season, which he absolutely is. But I think he is pretty responsible as well too for some of the stuff that's gone on this year. I mean, I think, for example, a failure to kind of address older players and kind of get them out the back door when it was needed, that's one thing. But again, we'll leave that to the side because it happened over the summer. But even this season, right, the lineups that he's put out, the setups that he's kind of set his team up to play, the substitutions in game that he's kind of made, his reluctance for so long to kind of stay away from young players and continue going with older guys that have let him down and quite clearly are no longer up to the level anymore. I do look at Pep this season and think to myself, yeah, City have a lot of shit going on this year, but I have to look at you as well too. And when I look at the lineup today, it's a very attacking lineup. When you look at the team sheet, there's a lot of firepower on the pitch. But the first thing I kind of realized and noticed was there is no out-and-out defensive midfielder in this team. And I understand Bernardo Silva has had a strong last couple of weeks kind of playing in that defensive midfield role, if you even want to call what he's playing that. He has kind of had a little revival in his season. But against a team like Palace, when you know you're going to have so much of the ball anyways, right? Palace, their game plan, you know what they're going to do. They're going to sit deep, they're going to soak up pressure, and on the odd occasion, they're going to try and hit you in transition. Something that City have struggled with all year. There's a guy in Nico Gonzalez that you bought in January to almost kind of fill the gaping hole that Rodri left behind this season. Just be a body in there. And I just find the decision to completely omit Nico Gonzalez from the starting 11 today and go with that lineup a little bit odd because if you look at it, the first 20 minutes or so was all City. It went exactly how you'd expect it to. City had all of the ball. They literally had Palace penned in for 20 whole minutes. And forget about just penned in. Palace could genuinely not string 3 passes together. It was domination. They were putting balls into the box. They were pressing for a goal. They just couldn't get it. And yet, it might be results-based analysis, right? But I feel like with City, the threat in transition from opposition always exists. And this year, more so than ever, the failure to kind of stop opposition attacks as high up the pitch as you can has really been a problem. Because City, we all know for years now, the way to hit them is in transition, because you're never going to outpossess them. But they had guys who were just able to kind of stop the danger as high up the pitch as possible, or at least win your physical midfield battles. And of course, a big part of that is down to Rodri, and him not being there is a big thing. But you have to at least try and subsidize the loss in some regard. And bringing in Nico Gonzalez in January was supposed to do exactly that. So for him to completely leave him out of the team today is absolutely baffling to me. And when you look at the goal that Palace score against them, it is quite literally that encapsulated. Crystal Palace, few nice combination passes in around the middle of the pitch, and then one long pass into the path of Munoz, who I thought had a tremendous game. And when you kind of identify pre-game threats for Crystal Palace, how they could potentially get in behind City, that threat of Munoz on the right is ridiculous, right? Whenever you want to kind of play this system, 3 at the back, you have to have elite wingbacks, or not even elite in terms of quality, but specialist wingbacks. And in Munoz, he is exactly that. He is a specialist wingback, similar to how Dumfries at Inter is a specialist wingback, similar to how at Leverkusen, Frimpong is a specialist wingback. Munoz for Crystal Palace is exactly that. He bombs up and down that flank. He's so tireless. He's a great athlete, got an eye for goal, and he can swing in a killer cross, a killer pass from that right-hand side. And I always felt that if Palace were going to hurt City today, it would come in that form. And of course, it's Mateta with brilliant hold-up play, really, really good center forward play on the day from Mateta, because he was practically on an island at most of the game, right? He's 1v4, 1v3. All he can do when he gets the ball is do his best in terms of holding it up and getting the likes of Eze into the game, getting the likes of Ismail Assar into the game. And in that moment, he did tremendously well. Again, the ball finds Munoz, pass into the box, and out of nothing, because seriously, Palace for 20 minutes were not in the game whatsoever. Eze with a tremendous finish. Past Ortega, 1-0 Crystal Palace, and who else, man? Honestly, you just always got the impression, too, that if anyone was going to score, if anyone was going to be the hero for Palace today, it was going to be Eze, because in a team in Crystal Palace under Glasner, who are so well organized and so well drilled and know their roles to a T, the one magician, the one X-factor guy in this team who you can kind of give the ball to and hope for, in any odd moment, a moment of class, a moment of calmness, a moment of swagger, a moment of just pure brilliance. It always seems to be Eze for them in this team. He is your old school maverick, your old school attacking midfielder. And he is the match winner as well too. And he took his goal so well. And look, man, he's seen a lot of guys come and go at Crystal Palace over the years, right? Zaha, Olise, obviously last season. He's the guy who's decided to stay up to this point. And for all that, I am very happy that he's the match winner today, man, because he is the crown jewel of Crystal Palace at the moment. For so many years, it was Zaha. At one point, it maybe promised to be Olise. Now, it's Eberechi Eze. And he's the guy who has written himself into Crystal Palace folklore for the rest of time, man. Match winner today. I wouldn't say man of the match, because the man of the match is the guy who plays in goal for Crystal Palace today, Dean Henderson. Now, today will undoubtedly go down, in my mind, like for as long as I live, whenever anyone asks me about the 2025 FA Cup final, I'll remember it as the Dean Henderson final. Similar to, in a way, how we remember the 2005 final for being the Steven Gerrard final, for example. This, for me, is the Dean Henderson final. And in every sense of the word, it's the Dean Henderson final. Because there was a moment today, yeah, where I can't lie, I think VAR got its spot off. If I'm being absolutely honest here, I think it's an absolute shocker that Dean Henderson played all 90 minutes. Like, I can't believe it. Quite simply, it's an absolute farce. The ball is being played in behind. Erling Haaland seems through on goal, or at least he has no one basically on him, running directly at goal. Dean Henderson comes out to try and clear, slaps the ball away, and without even seeing a replay, everybody all of a sudden thinks, surely he's out of his box. Surely he's out of his area. Then you see the replay, and he absolutely is out of his area. And I'm hearing the commentators saying, oh, well, to be fair, the ball is going wide anyways. Well, it's going wide because Erling Haaland is trying to get around the goalkeeper to then score on what would be an open goal. And it's also going wide because Dean Henderson slapped it that way. I cannot, for the life of me, understand how Dean Henderson has avoided a red card in that situation. I would love to hear the commentators, or the referee's logic. As I always say, I'm not a referee. I don't know the letter of the law, every single reason for every single rule. There could be, I don't know, maybe like a loophole. I have no idea. But for as long as I've been watching football and what I know about the sport, that's a red card. That's a red card. So I think Henderson got away with one massively, and I think Palace did as well too, because when you look at how influential Henderson was for Palace today, it is ridiculous. The amount of saves, the big moments where he stepped up huge, coming out on one-on-ones and making himself big. It was a heroic performance from Dean Henderson. And he's someone personally, right? And this isn't even hindsight speaking. As a Man United fan, I cannot believe we let him go the way we did. Now, that's not to say I think Dean Henderson is a world-class goalkeeper. I think he's a good goalkeeper. That's really it. But I remember that period in time when it was him and David De Gea kind of fighting for that number one spot. And I always felt personally that Dean Henderson had a point in the team where De Gea was out through injury, and I actually think Dean Henderson was playing quite well. Yes, he had one or two errors, in particular that one against Liverpool, that I don't think he ever managed to live down in the eyes of Man United fans. But I felt it was harsh because David De Gea had plenty of errors as well too. And ultimately, Man United decided to choose between Henderson and De Gea, and they picked De Gea, which I think personally was a mistake. Dean Henderson was the younger guy. He was the guy on the up. I felt David De Gea at that point was starting to go on the decline. You had seen more and more errors in his game. You knew on the ball he wasn't the best anyways. That's a decision that personally I've always looked back on and thought, I think we should have kept Henderson in that moment. Now, that's not to say we couldn't have got someone better. Similar to Onana and De Gea. We could have got better than Onana. That doesn't mean that replacing De Gea was the wrong decision. But Dean Henderson, man. And one thing with Dean Henderson we do know is saving penalties, the guy is big. He knows how to save penalties, which actually, again, taking it back to United, sorry, this is the last time. Seeing David De Gea fail to save 11 penalties in a row that night in, what was it, Gdansk or whatever, wherever we played Villarreal in the Europa League final. When we had a guy who was so professional at saving penalties, Dean Henderson has shown time and time again throughout his career, from 12 yards, he is a problem. He is a problem. And Man City get themselves a penalty. Is it a foul? Is it not? I mean, if we're being real, Bernardo Silva is making a meal out of it. He absolutely is. And did Mitchell get a touch on it? Yes, he did. However, I do always think you're kind of setting yourself up to be in trouble in those kinds of moments when you go to ground like that. But regardless, City got a penalty, and everybody's expecting Erling Haaland to step up and take it. And yet he picks up the ball and gives it to Omar Marmoush. Now, Erling Haaland missed a penalty earlier in the season, in the FA Cup as well too, against Bournemouth. But I have to be honest with you, right? It might be a decision from higher above him, right? It might be Pep deciding that. It might be the coaching staff deciding that Marmoush from penalties is more prolific. I don't know. I know Marmoush was taking them at Frankfurt. He has a pretty good record. So maybe it's a decision from the coaching staff. And if that's the case, I cannot understand it. But if it's a decision from Erling Haaland, I also can understand it. And even Alan Shearer was saying on commentary, as the number 9, as a goal-scoring phenomenon, you have to be grabbing the ball there, surely, no matter how many you've missed in recent times, and backing yourself to score it yourself. The center forwards of yesteryear are all selfish enough and hungry enough for goals that they put it down themselves and take that penalty themselves. Now, if it's coming from Pep, that's a totally different thing. And I'd love to hear from either Haaland or Pep whose decision was that. But I find it extremely bizarre if it was Erling Haaland's. And something about it tells me it was from Pep, because Haaland seems like a guy desperate for goals. He seems like a guy starving for goals. For him, he doesn't like going in a game or coming out of a game without scoring. I'd like to kind of get more clarity on that, because I found that extremely bizarre. And even looking at Marmoush's run-up and looking at his face before he was about to take it, I mean, we all kind of felt he was going to miss. Honestly, it was no surprise to me whatsoever when he missed. Not because I think he's a bad penalty taker, but sometimes you can kind of just tell when something's about to happen. And today, throughout that game, City had plenty of chances, but throughout, I just got the feeling it's Crystal Palace's day. It almost feels like fate. It feels like destiny. Like, it felt like it was magic. The magic of the FA Cup. It genuinely felt like Crystal Palace's day throughout. Second half, Palace, I think, defended a whole lot better. Yes, City still had more of the ball, but I think first half, City were much more dominant. However, I want to give a shout out to Echeverri, who came on as a substitute today. A guy who has not played for City once since arriving to the club full-time in January, which again, I look at Pep and his decision to kind of leave youngsters out for so many times. His decision again to leave McAtee out of the entire squad today, leave Rico Lewis. He gives Echeverri his debut today. And today of all days, that's the day he decides to give Echeverri his first few minutes. And Echeverri missed a few chances today, right? He did go through on goal a few times, which people will say like, oh, he cost City today, which I think is ridiculous, because I actually think his cameo was pretty good. I think he was extremely lively. And from the minute that he got onto the pitch, the first thing I noticed about him is that he's always moving off the ball. He's always kind of moving. Every time he doesn't have it, he's trying to make a run in behind. He's trying to make a run and receive it through the lines. And unfortunately, City, a big problem about them this year is they just play too safe. They play way too safe. They play way too cautious, and they don't try and play those killer passes unless your name is Kevin De Bruyne. So I felt for him in that moment. But yes, he got a few chances on goal. But I do think at times too, you have to realize those chances are coming because of his instincts, because of his movement. And I did feel on the ball as well, too. He was pretty decent. So Echeverri, right? Maybe it's too early to say, but I thought he looked pretty promising today, man. And I think that's a decent option to have next season going forward if City decide to keep him at the club and not loan him out. But ultimately, Crystal Palace held out until the end, even with 10 minutes of injury time. And they are the FA Cup winners. And I have to give so many guys shout outs here, right? Oliver Glasner. What an absolutely ridiculous job this guy has done at Palace. An absolutely ridiculous job. We all remember where Palace were before Glasner took over the job. They had just brought back Roy Hodgson for a second stint after trying it with Vieira. But it just felt like under Roy Hodgson, first of all, they were just a club in absolute limbo, just going through the motions, lifeless. Palace were the least interesting team in the league with Roy Hodgson there because you knew, yeah, they're probably too good to go down. It's not going to happen that they're going to go down. But they could just accomplish way more. When you looked at the players that they have at their disposal, Olise, Mateta. In fact, I don't even want to say Mateta because Mateta, before Glasner came, was kind of seen as a bum, if we're being honest. But they had Olise, they had Ismail Assar, they had Eberechi Eze. They had good players around that squad. But under Roy Hodgson, you just felt like, yeah, he had done really well to kind of maintain their status as a Premier League club year in, year out. You have to give Roy that honor, but you just kind of got the impression, be a little more ambitious. Go take a risk. Go try and bring up more, I don't know, what's the word here? A manager who just has a bit more to him. And in Oliver Glasner, a guy who did such great work in Germany, winning the Europa League for, was it Frankfurt, coming to the club, and he's even spoken about this, identifying that, look, I've never played three at the back before, but this squad is built to play three at the back. That's something I think he deserves a lot of credit for, right? He didn't come in with his whole ideology saying everyone has to play my way or the highway, which, to be fair, is what Amram is doing at Man United. He's trying to do it a different way. He came in and said, what system suits the squad the best? I know, 3-4-3 or what is it, 3-5-2, whatever he plays with them these days. And it's worked absolute wonders. I know the first few games that he was at Palace last season, they couldn't buy a win, they couldn't win a game, but every time I watched Palace, seriously, I thought to myself, oh, they definitely look like a better team. They definitely look much better under Glasner. And sure enough, the wins started racking up and racking up and racking up. And the last 10, 15 games of last season, or however many games it was under Glasner, Palace were probably the most informed team in the league last year, going into the end of the season. Mateta, a guy who some people were saying looked like the worst striker in the Prem, completely revitalized under Glasner, went on a crazy run, and then going into this season, again had a tough start to the season. I think the first few games, they couldn't win one. I think first 6 games or so, they couldn't win a game. But all of a sudden, with the new additions made under Glasner, the likes of Lacroix, the likes of, at one point, Chalobah, I know he went back to Chelsea, the likes of Kamada, all of a sudden, Crystal Palace got into a mode. And again, second half of this season, they have been one of the form teams in the league. And it's all kind of lined up to this day. The run to the cup final was brilliant. And today, against one of the biggest, best teams in Europe, no matter what their form suggests, they have beaten Man City in the cup final, and they have won a trophy. They've etched themselves into folklore in Crystal Palace. They are all legends. I mean, if you win your team's first trophy, that's it. Every one of those guys is legends. A special shout out to Joel Ward, who will be leaving Crystal Palace at the end of the season. I seen a Crystal Palace fan recently put him on their Mount Rushmore. I thought maybe, is that a little bizarre? But when you think about it, he's been there the entire time. He's captained the club. I mean, he's literally lifted the trophy today, and what a way for him to kind of bow out. Mateta, like I said, since Glasner came in, has developed into such a promising center forward, right? An absolute battering ram, but with such a soft touch as well, too. In my opinion, one of the most improved players since last season. Munoz, like I said, at wingback, an absolute problem. Guehi, the stand-in captain, because Ward doesn't start anymore. What a monstrous performance and what a monstrous season he's had for Crystal Palace. Really emerged as maybe one of the best center backs outside of the traditional Big Six. Everything about Palace, I'm absolutely over the moon for them, man. What a day for them. What a day for the fans. And a moment that will live long in the memory for everyone affiliated with that club. But just to end it off, Man City. I mean, now all eyes on Champions League, right? Qualifying for that competition is a must. It's a necessity. It's not guaranteed yet. They still have to win their games, basically, that they still have to play, which it is in their hands. But I don't know if City, man, you know what it is? Even in the last few weeks when they've been winning games, I've just thought to myself, right? It's not convincing whatsoever. Even when they beat Palace a few weeks ago, they went down, I think, 2-0. They almost went down 3-0. And yeah, they got a result at the end of the day, but you just look at it and you're like, are they making Champions League because they're a great team, or are they making Champions League because the competition around them just isn't good enough? This is a team that at one point went 1 win in 13 in all competitions. This is a team at the moment that Erling Haaland looks like someone's possessed him. He doesn't look like the same. I don't know of City, man. I don't know what to say about them. It's one of the weirdest seasons I can ever remember because they haven't been good. I don't think anyone can really gaslight me into thinking that. And yet, they could have won the FA Cup today, and they're probably going to make top four. I mean, they're still in with a shout at second if you really want to be mathematical about it. But I think going into next season, a lot has to change. A lot has to change. I do think the way Pep has kind of had this team drilled and the way he's had them playing, dare I say, has kind of been figured out this year. I think he's got to return next season with fresh ideas, man. This slow build up in terms of like death by a trillion passes, maybe without Rodri, can it be executed as well as possible, especially when you don't have like that insurance policy in front of your back four like he's been the last few seasons. Another thing, De Bruyne leaving at the end of the season. De Bruyne is no longer perfect, and I think you saw it today, but the damning indictment is that it's still him who creates most of City's chances. It's still him who seems to be the only one that can kind of find Erling Haaland with his crosses into the box. What do City look like without Kevin De Bruyne next season? I think it's a busy summer for them next year. I see the links to Florian Wirtz. I see the links to, who else were they linked to? Reinders. I think both those players are world-class, like top players, and they do improve City. But I'm not really convinced that next year it's as simple as they add 2-3 players and they're right back hitting 90 points again. I'm not so sure about that. Now, it's Pep and it's City, so you can never be too uncertain. You can never count them out for sure. But I think a lot of improvement is needed at the club over the next 3 months, man. A big improvement. And the fact that they're going to the Club World Cup, they don't even gotta get a break from football, which I think a lot of these guys and Pep need. I don't think is that encouraging. But today is not about City. Today is all about Crystal Palace. A momentous day for the club. Full congratulations to everyone affiliated. And this is what it's all about, man. This is what it's all about. For all those clubs, the likes of Brighton, the likes of Everton, the likes of Fulham, all these clubs that are kind of like in obscurity when it comes to challenging for silverware, competing for Champions League football. They don't really have that in their eyesight. A day like today, I think, gives all those clubs hope that, look, man, all it takes is one special fairy tale run to a final, and then it's 90 minutes between you and destiny. So big up to Crystal Palace, big up to everyone affiliated, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Peace.